Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prowess Goes Live. We are super excited for today's show. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Natalie Schmerdla, and I'm the OBM Engagement Manager here at Prowess Project. And I am hanging out today with Leah, our COO. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Prowess Project, we train and educate and upskill women into the role as an OBM. And then we find their perfect clients and match them as well. Today, we're super excited to talk to you about finding your niche and where your niche is hanging out and understanding how we can start getting your lead list growing. So with that, we always start with our opening question. So tell us, who's your dream lead? Is it a neighbor, a relative, maybe a celebrity, whomever? Throw it in the chat. Let us know who your dream leads are. And while that is happening, Leah, who's your dream lead?
Such a great question. I don't even know there's lots. My dream lead is just that woman out there that wants to get out there and do the next thing. Like those are my dream leads. It's not necessarily like a celebrity or an author, another podcast host. It's more that feeling of that person who's like, I'm ready. That's my dream lead.
I love that too, because that totally aligns with your values. And so I think that, that's a thing that people miss a lot when they're defining their niche is your niche can be values aligned. It doesn't necessarily have to be an industry or a skill set per se. So I love that. Mine is Reese Witherspoon. Ever since she was in Omaha filming, I'm located in Omaha, Nebraska. Ever since she was in Omaha filming Election, I've been a fan. And I love that she is a mega entrepreneur now. She's got a production company. She has a book club. She has a clothing line. She has all of these different ideas and feels like one of those people that sure, she has privilege now that she has, millions of dollars, but she's not limited. And so I think that, kind of scaling it back to what you were talking about, that limitless perspective that she's just a badass that's going after all of the different things that are interesting to her. So I love that.
Well, I love how that aligns with you though, too, because you have so many different skill sets that I can see how you working with someone who has multiple angles in their business, like it's not just one thing, because
Yeah.
you do, I mean, I get to stand back in awe of the work that you do of being diversified, and some of it's tech and some of it's e-commerce and some of it's speaking stuff. Like you switch so well, like that code switching, you make it look simple. So I can see how that would working with someone who was multifaceted in their business would be exactly where you should be.
I love that. Thank you. That was a very nice compliment.
You're welcome. You deserve it.
All right, y'all. So let's get started. So today we're just going to be walking through some ideas and suggestions on how you can get out there and start finding out where your niche is hanging out. So let's start with the obvious. Why niche? What is a niche? All of that kind of thing. So for those of you that have been in our masterclass, we talk about niching a lot. And really what you want to understand here is your niche is going to help you attract people rather than necessarily filtering out people. So that's the way that we like to look at it. We like to remember that you are using your niche as a magnet, not a filter. So keep that in mind. Like Leah was mentioning, my clients are, a wide variety of different areas. So it allows you to really speak to someone rather than everyone. So think of it that way. And then the other thing that a niche can do is it really gives you that expertise, right? It helps kind of promote you up as a subject matter expert, a guru. There's a variety of different words that you can use to describe what that looks like. But then as you're thinking about the 4 layers of your niche, it's really what kind of industry is it that you want to be in? So is it finance? Is it wellness? Is it technology? Like there's a variety of different options that are out there. What feels good to you? Where are you interested? What's a passion for you that you might want to kind of lean into? Second piece of that is like, how big of a business are you thinking? Are you wanting a small mom and pop that's in the $250,000 revenue range? Or are you looking at 3 million, 5 million, $10 million businesses? What does that look like? And where does that feel good for you to be supporting? Think about those behavioral traits, right? So, what is the problem that you are solving for that person? Are they overwhelmed? Do they have too many ideas and they never get started? Is it somebody who just kind of is really scrappy and wants something a little more put together and polished? What does that look like? And then lastly, thinking about the customer's buying style. Are they moving fast? Are they focused on getting the best bang for their buck? Are they kind of really price conscious? And so they want to make sure that they, are right in their buying style. So those are kind of the 4 layers of a niche. And again, if you want to learn more about that, we can certainly share with you more details. We do have a masterclass coming up at the end of April as well. It starts April 21st, and the second day of that masterclass really, Ashley will dive into a lot more detail on niches. So we'd love to see you there if you are interested. But back to today. So let's start talking about where your niches are going to be hanging out. So tip number 1, learning where your niche goes to learn, connect, and buy. What's important to understand is that there are 3 different behaviors or actions that result from where these niches are hanging out. So let's talk about learning, right? So when someone is going to look for someone to come onto their team, or they are looking for someone to support a function that they aren't the subject matter expert in, maybe they are looking for something but they don't really know what it looks like, that's in that learning stage, right? So those are going to be newsletters, right? They're going to sign up for every coach's newsletter that they can find. They are going to be looking on the Google, right? Searching all of the internets for all of the opportunities that they can find. They're going to be looking for a class. Is there a class that they can sign up? That's really that research phase, that learning phase. And so that is one place that you could absolutely connect with somebody that's in your niche. The second piece of that is, where are they connecting? So where are they actually communicating? Where are they finding people with like problems or like services now that they know what they want? It's really about kind of connecting. Who do I know, or where is that person going to be located that I can connect with them, right? So that's what that connection is, really digging into that. And then the last piece of that, well, I guess to talk a little bit more about that connection piece, those are going to be like masterminds. Coaches love masterminds. They will sign up for a mastermind because they get the opportunity to connect with others, to bounce ideas off of each other, to really kind of test drive some ideas that they may have had, ask for experience or expertise. So masterminds are a big place for connection, especially if you're looking at a coach. And then the last piece is the buying stage. So people that have built their business to a point, they've done their research, they've connected with certain people. Now they're in the buying stage. And these people are really going to be hanging out in LinkedIn, right? Business to business connections. They're going to be hanging out in Alignable. They are going to be reaching out to people who may have worked with them in the past, be that a contractor, a former employee, somebody of that sort. Or they're going to be going to job boards, Fiverr, Indeed, Glassdoor, like places where they can find people who are going to fill the role that they are looking to get filled on their team. So, really understanding where your leads are going to learn, going to connect, and going to buy is super important when you're getting started and trying to do that lead generation.
No, like I love how you're framing this, like in that very much how they're thinking, that mindset that they're in, because that's the hard part, right? Of doing all of
Right.
this is we have these ideas, we're excited about the business that we're building or we have built. We've had a couple customers maybe like in our betas, but then we're
Right.
like, okay, now we're ready. I want to start attracting. So really getting to that point of what is my client's mindset? And
Hmm.
another way I like to look at it is when, again, if I go back to values of a client, because
Yeah.
that's where I really connect with people is when there's similar values. And so if I'm thinking, all right, I want to attract clients that are really authentic, that's usually
Yeah.
they like to know who it is, right? Or maybe that's the type of services I like to do. I like to help with content and people's voice. And so it's more
Mhm.
personal. They
Yeah.
might like in person events, right? So you want to target those if you are going after tech solutions, right? Like you're wanting to help people solve the problem of saving time. You may know that that's their burden right now. Then, like you were saying, like the online groups are super helpful because they're just saving themselves time by networking in those. So if you're there offering solutions, it's a great way to find them. And then the other one that I always think about is if they are that latest and greatest tech person, right? They want whatever, then that might be someone who's going to be at a conference or they're going to be at a
Mhm.
demo. They're going to be
Yep.
saying, has anyone else tested this? So
Yeah.
I just like to look at it from that perspective of like, what is that thing right now that is the most valuable to them? And whether it's connection, time, or being, if they're early adopters, being in the same spaces as them.
100%. And love the comments that are coming in too, Leah, because we'll talk about that too. Like any of those three stages can also be an in-person event. So if you are someone who wants to connect in the learning stage or the connecting stage, go to your small business association chamber of commerce. Go to, any of those kinds of meetings. Find the coffee connects, find the monthly meetups. Like these don't all have to be virtual. So yeah, definitely love that. And I've got a couple examples too that I can share. I'm actually going to a women's conference next week. So as part of my um niche, I prefer to work with women and femme business owners, and so what better place to find a bunch of leads than going to a women's conference? So yes, absolutely love that. And it definitely can be an expense, so it might not be something right off the bat. So look for those lower cost ticket items that you can get into pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm noticing most like small towns have some kind of business entrepreneur group, right?
Yeah.
It's a coffee connection in your town. Um, those like it's similar, right? So if you the women's conference, the big one you're not ready for, you can go to the ones that are smaller and more just locally focused.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, so tip number two. So tip number one is learning where they go to learn, connect, and buy. Tip number two, listen to what your niche is talking about and asking for help with. And we in OBM University talk a lot about info interviews and really like starting there and understanding um what problems the people that you think you might want to support or service are going to be dealing with on a daily basis. So when you are listening to your niche, maybe you've really found where you want to hang out, whether it's any of those options that we kind of talked through, listening and understanding what they're asking for help with. So, a lot of times, this is as simple as going to, again, you're in a coffee connect in person, and somebody says, hey, I really, I would just really love it if I could X, Y, or Z. I could create an app. I could, have all of my scheduling handled online so my clients didn't have to call me. Um, when you hear things like that being said, again, whether it's, posting on Facebook or LinkedIn or what have you, or if it's in person, throw suggestions out there. Oh, have you thought about, if it's the scheduling app, have you looked into Acuity, or, do you have familiarity with Calendly? Throw out something that you're familiar with, because that helps elevate you as a subject matter expert, a guru, any one of those terms that we talked about, and gets them to like come back. Yeah, here were the problems that I had with it. Oh, I understand your problem. And then it just becomes a normal organic conversation, and it will keep them interested in you, and you can also learn about the problems that they are having so that you can find solutions to solving them for them, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense, Natalie. And what to me, when you have that story, right, that's what helps it transition into an organic conversation because you're just saying, I use this solution for this problem.
Right.
And then they want to know more. Or, like you said, they may have said, yeah, I tried it, but it didn't work for me. And then you can just follow up with questions or say, hey, if you ever want to talk through it, we can
Mhm.
schedule a call. You're just getting to know them better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing too is when you are going into these conversations, you can ask people that you have supported in the past. So again, as part of your normal dialogue, ask where do you find your own clients? Where are you finding people that are similar to you? Who do you go to when you want to bounce ideas off of or get, insights or expertise? Ask them where they're hanging out. And then go to those places where those niche where the people who are in your niche are hanging out.
Well, the other thing when we talk about like the data that we could get
Mm,
from that, right?
right,
Um, like where they're commenting or if they're using certain things to identify themselves. So that could be hashtags or
right,
keywords. Our
right.
buddy ChatGPT can help us with some of that, right? So if we're
Absolutely.
wanting, again, if we don't feel like we know the people to go ask them or listen to them at that moment of what they're talking about, we're really in the beginning stages. Chat can help fill in some of that gap.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like a very simple example of this that I have found to be helpful is uh I took a course. It was a career coaching leadership course. From there, I essentially, got to know all of the people in there. There were some that were in corporate looking to kind of level up. There were some that were in their own business. And this is well before OBM University. And I've sort of just continued to follow those people and their careers beyond. And that's exactly what your niche is doing too. They meet people, 5, 10, whatever, however long ago throughout the course of their careers. And they go back to them and ask for feedback. So make sure that you do the same for yourself in your business. Um, but as an example, one of the gals often would refer to this um, group, right? So you can find all of them again, whether you're in Alignable or whether you're in Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever the case might be. And essentially, they started posting things like, I'm looking to add to my team. I don't really know what this role looks like. I have some ideas of the kind of things that I want them to do. And that person commented, hey, Natalie, is this what OBMs do? And from there, I had the opportunity to kind of, continue the conversation and engage and that sort of thing. But the message that I want to kind of share with the audience today is that look for people that are doing that. right? So if you are in a, a women's group, a small business group, a mommy group, like a PTA, PTO, whatever the case might be, get together or listening for people asking those kinds of questions opens the door for you to kind of say, oh, yeah, actually, I can really help you with that. Let's set up a conversation. And going into the conversation, you're on a fact finding mission. Take the pressure of the sale off of yourself. Go in and understand what they're looking for and listen. And it might be a fit and it might not, but at least you've made a connection and you have some data that you can continue to kind of move forward with your leads.
Love it.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Tip number 3. When you're going after your leads and looking for where they might be hanging out, make sure that you are in a gathering ground, or I'm sorry, a buying zone as opposed to a gathering ground. So what do we mean by that? A gathering ground is literally those kinds of places where you are getting awareness, you are meeting the people where they are, you're trying to understand what kind of problems people need a solution for. Really, that's that research, that learning and connecting space, right? You haven't quite gotten them to the selling place yet. Versus a buying zone is where they are ready to buy. They are looking, they are trying to get this solution solved or this problem solved with the solution. They are ready to cut the check, like, let's go. That's a buying zone. The other thing you need to consider is the right buying zone, right? So we'll talk about what is a gathering ground versus what is a buying zone. And then also we'll talk about our favorite ATP and ETP and describe that here in just a second. So gathering grounds. People like to find information. They like to build up a little bit of trust in those spaces. So again, this is like your free summits. Where can you go, grab a cup of coffee that you were probably going to pay for anyway, and just start to make connections, start to learn more about other people, that kind of thing. Facebook groups, if you have Slack communities, those Substacks that are starting to get really super popular, anything like that. Those are kind of your gathering grounds where you're getting the data so that you can come up with a solution. Your buying zone is really where somebody is ready to pull the trigger and make things happen, right? So that is LinkedIn. That is somebody putting something on LinkedIn that says, hey, I'm looking to connect with people who do X, Y, or Z. Or a job post. I'm looking for someone to fill out my team in this area, social media management, office organization, networking and networking, automation and workflows, like something like that, right? That's where they're hanging out. These might be direct referrals. Again, in the situation, a gal I hadn't chatted with in 3 years saw something and was like, hey, I think I know somebody that might fill this for you. So those are coming from your past experience, the neighbors, people from church, wherever that you might connect with as well. When you are in those spaces, what is important to understand is whether or not you are finding a client or a lead with ATP, which is ability to pay, and ETP, which is eagerness to pay, right? So you want to make sure that you are understanding. And we have a live show with Ellen Melko Moore that you can also refer back to, where she goes into a lot more detail around that. But effectively, you want to make sure you're in the right buying zone with the right level of ATP, because it's one thing to hang out and meet great leads, but if they can't pay you, it's not the right group for you. And so being able to identify where those groups are is super important as well as you're starting to build your lead list.
I like how you're thinking about that, Natalie. It reminds me of that, like when we go through the know, like, trust, buy
Mm.
process, right? When we're building out our own funnel systems and all of that. And this buying zone is really you're wanting to catch the people that are they're going to trust more. You're going to move them faster into that phase because you're showing up in the same places that they're showing up vulnerable. They're in
Yeah.
pain, right?
Yeah.
They need to hire. They're posting. All of it is a very vulnerable experience when you're like, I'm putting it out there,
Yeah.
right? Who's going to come into my life and help me solve this problem or change the direction I'm going? So when you're in a like-minded space, and you can even comment on that, like, I like
Mhm.
connecting people on LinkedIn because they're at this level, or whatever it is, right? Um, if it is similar groups, you're already getting to that trust because you're there with a similar mindset. They already know that you can dive into a conversation quicker. It is, like you said, almost that referral
Yeah.
type mindset where it could be a referral or it could just be because you're showing up in the same space as them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the other thing, you just triggered a thought in my mind, but um, anytime you are going through that, I don't really know what I need, but I need something, right? At that point in time, they already have felt the pain. They've already identified that they need to take action. And right, wrong, or indifferent, you're there as the I don't want to say band-aid. You're there as the surgeon, right? To
Mhm.
close the wound for the pain that they are experiencing. And so you have to be very um readily available to help show them why you're the right pick or why you can solve their problem quickly. And so that's why you want to be in that right buying zone.
Yeah. And the other thing that I just want to point out is that, and I'll speak for myself as an OBM, I can get in my head of who am I to offer this
Mm.
solution. But I do think OBMs should realize that we're in a unique space that a lot of your potential clients, they have that eagerness to pay, they have the pain. They might not even know what an OBM is.
Right.
So you're going to lead with a solution of like, hey, have you ever thought of this? So you get them engagement. And then when you start bringing up, well, an online business or they can help with that, now you're providing them a solution they didn't know about. And that really helps when it's like that consultative process to really
Mhm.
teach somebody something new. And so, one, you have something to continually follow up on. Two, you shared something new. You can see right off the bat if they're interested and that is a hook for them.
Yeah.
And right, and then know if okay, I'm heading down the right path with this person. If they're like, I already know it, it didn't work for me, then it's a quick conversation and you can pivot. But
Exactly.
I think that we need to leverage that a lot of people don't even know what an OBM is.
Yep. 100%. And again, that's where the simple, to your point, going back to our first conversation, is create the organic conversation, and then it's not so much of a selling point. It's just a,
Mhm.
here's why I'm an expert in this space, and here's how things that you may want to consider, and then they're going to be like, oh yeah, I want that, can you do that? It just becomes a super easy turnaround at that point.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Okay, tip number 4. So this one is probably, I would say, the hardest thing in the beginning to do, because you are so focused on I just want a client. I just want a project. I just want to get started. It becomes easier after you get that first client, but this is aligning your energy with the intent. So, if you are sitting in a gathering ground and you are expecting people at that stage to convert to a client, you're probably in the wrong spot. On the other hand, if you are totally getting ignored while you're sitting in your buying zone, then you haven't built the value and the visibility that those clients needed in that gathering ground stage. So when you think of this, you need to consider the state, again, all of those 4 things that we were talking about for your niche. You need to consider where your clients, where your leads are currently at with their buying style, and their stage of business and make sure that you're in the right spot. So a couple of, examples here. When you look at a coach versus a SaaS startup, they're going to be wildly different behaviors, right? Your coaches are going to be connecting super broad networks, really kind of honing in, versus a SaaS startup is going to be looking for a very specific persona that is needing a very specific problem solved and that sort of thing. You also want to make sure that wherever it is you are at is the right match. So if I'm going into a Facebook brainstorming group versus attending that Chamber of Commerce meeting in person, both of which could absolutely be in that gathering ground stage, right? But if I am one of 1,000 versus one of 50, my visibility is a significantly different level. So in the Facebook group where, yes, I may get someone to follow me or connect or what have you, I can work really hard at it. I'm one of 1,000 versus a smaller group where I have an opportunity to have my voice heard more often, more regularly. I'm probably going to have more luck in conversion in that scenario. So the question you want to kind of keep going in your head there is, am I being visible or am I being findable? And those I think are two different things.
That's a very good one, Natalie. Because I think that also that if you don't take a look at that, like that's what can put us like closer to burnout. If we feel like we're doing all of these things just to do them and checking all the boxes, but it's really not in alignment, then we get frustrated, right?
Yeah.
So it is pausing to go back and look and asking those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about that question too, am I being visible or am I being findable? Because we're ops-minded, I think of two different things, right? So being findable is like, do I have a website? Do I have a business card? Do I have a contact page that somebody can give me their email information? Being visible is the comments. I'm putting myself out there as the expert. I'm showing up to these coffee connects. I am scheduling time to learn more about these individuals' problems. I think that is just that is how I perceive that question or how I answer that question of visible versus findable.
Yes. And I know that I am very guilty of making myself beautifully findable, right? Reworking the contact page, reworking the automation to send the email, but not taking the time to go be visible and stepping into your own OBM power and what you are an expert in.
Yeah.
And really holding yourself accountable to taking those actions as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like taking that next stage is super hard because what if? The what if then comes into mind. So what do we do when we get into those modes? We build spreadsheets, right? Like we build automations, we build spreadsheets. So let that data be your guide on where you're at in all of these places. Are you in a gathering ground? Are you in a buying zone? Go look at the last 5, 10, 500 people that you've chatted with. How did you find them? What was the outcome? Did you what kind of problems were they wanting to have solved for them? What kind of revenue state was that business at? Get whatever kind of information you can or what makes sense for your business into a spreadsheet and then use the data and go back there. Like it's we get caught up in the how's it going to feel? What is it going to look like? All of that kind of stuff. Let the data be your guide.
Love it. because that is, for us, it's like the perfect partner. I know in OBMU we talk a lot about being your own CEO, and that's like
Yeah,
one of those exercises.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think the other thing too is like when you get that data, then you figure out like, oh crud, I've been hanging out in the wrong spots.
We stay comfortable, right? So we
Yeah.
might stay in a place too long because we like everybody and it's
Yeah.
very fun. There's no anxiety going into that coffee chat, right? But
Mhm.
it's not giving us what we actually need for our business. And I think that's really important, is that there are times that we have to grow and move on from some of them, right?
Yeah.
Or if you've been pouring a bunch of energy in it because everyone told you that was the network group to be in, but it's not working for you, it is okay to leave those,
Yeah.
right? It's go back to the spreadsheet, go back to your niche, go back to where you really wanted to be with your business. And like, I do think this whole thing is a cycle,
Yeah.
right? We don't do our niche
Absolutely.
once and done, right? So maybe it's quarterly you're evaluating it, maybe it's twice a year, but
Yeah.
it's always going to be a growth process.
Absolutely. It's an interesting and I'll give you kind of a real world example. So my brother runs a video production company and he's had the company now for about 6 years. And the first place he went when he started the business was the local chamber of commerce. And as a result of that, he was able to get quite a few connections and leads. But there's only so much video production that, you can do for a company. It's not like they need it every week with reason, right? Like he ended up finding a real estate agent that, he was able to have recurring um video content for. But then also understanding when you're outgrowing that space because you've done the intro video for everybody and they don't need it again for 2 or 3 years, right? So really kind of thinking about that as a similar experience. As an OBM, you get that point when you are outpacing the work that you are doing. So what I mean by that is if you have, you get started and you have 2 or 3, 4, however many clients that you have, and then you find a client who maybe wants something a little more extensive. And so you update your pricing, you update your packages, and then you come back and you realize that's not in my previous group's ability to pay anymore. I have upskilled myself into the next stage. You got to go find that new group, right? So you may go back to those gathering grounds 5, 10, 15 times throughout as you scale your business, as you refine your niche, as refine your services, whatever the case might be. But it's having that one, it's okay to do that. And sometimes you just need somebody to say, yeah, you can absolutely go do that. Go upcharge. You've got proof now. It's going to work. Put it in the spreadsheet. Go find the next one. Right. And then two, I think it is um, seeing the progress. So again, now you've got the one example, go after the next one, get another one under your belt, and then it just becomes easier as you move forward.
Yes. And I think it's important to realize that it is absolutely okay
Mm.
to change all that.
Yeah,
Just because the
absolutely.
people keep coming back for the same, like the small package that you started with, it is okay to say to them, I now refer that out. And I specialize in this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you're building your referral network. And so you partner with somebody else and now you guys have a whole, other area where you can go find your niche hanging out in
Mhm.
those other areas.
Yeah, because the other thing that came to mind was like in that gathering background stage, or even in the listening, is you might be like networking with other OBMs that do
Yeah.
something different, right? Or it's
Yeah.
bookkeepers, or it's something adjacent. And that might be a space where it is just the gathering, right? You're just learning and you're getting data, so that those referrals can happen, and it will get you so much closer to that point where someone is ready to buy.
Yeah, and a real simple example of that. When I first started out, one of the first things I got connected with a gentleman on Alignable. And he is a serial entrepreneur, and he is basically a business consultant that comes into businesses to help them scale and or kind of move to the next stage. So a lot of his clients tended to be people that were trying to prepare their business for the next generation, whatever that looked like, whether they were retiring, whether they were, selling the business, but whatever the next generation of that business would be. And so it was a great starting point because he would go through the strategy, the consultant, lay out the vision, the objectives, all of the goals. And he essentially said, I don't want to do any of the next work. So then he would subcontract and bring me in to build the plan, execute the plan, train the team, build the SOPs, do all that kind of stuff. And, it wasn't something I knew I was going to necessarily stay with a long term, but it was a way to get testimonials under my belt, identify what I like to do and what I didn't like to do. And so that referral network, even if it's people you worked with in your past, whatever the case might be, is so extremely valuable throughout the course of your business.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, I know we're just about at time today. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you found this session helpful. Next week, we will continue digging into like lead generation. So we've got a great guest coming on next week. And then, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we do have another live masterclass kicking off on April. I almost said August. I'm not trying to jump ahead.
Don't do that to me.
April 21st. So if you have not had the chance to attend, Leah just threw the link in our chat there. We'd love to see you. Otherwise, we will be back at it next week. Thanks, everyone.